You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over.
This is not my home. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon. Why aren't you laughing?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
Welcome to the Batman Book Club, a podcast exploring the Dark Knight Library. I'm your host, Ryan Lauer. The Batman Book Club is a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, hosted by Batman on Film. Just go to batmanonfilm.com, click on podcast, and you'll find the Batman Podcast Network that has a whole list of other Bat-related shows that also like to, with Peter Vera, frolic into other nerdy subjects that we all frolic about. Yeah, that sounds right. The Batman Book Club is also on Patreon. If you like what's going on with the show and you want to help support the show, keep the generators running in the Wayne Manor study, just go to patreon.com/thebatmanbc. Now, thank you for listening to episode 142, The Lost Years. Intriguing. Joining me for this, you've heard his voice on here plenty of times before. You saw him in the background with the Super Mario Brothers plumbing commercial during the Super Bowl because he's the third Mario brother. It's one Ryan Haas. Ryan Haas, welcome back to this show that you've been on a lot.
Hello, I'm excited to be back onto the book club. Yes.
I want to applaud you for having just like this has been your time to shine these past couple of years with the resurgence of the Mario Brothers.
Oh my gosh.
And the movie that's coming, the commercial, the 93 movie getting some respect online. And I'm pretty sure you're responsible for all of it. So congratulations.
I'm just waiting for the OG 93 movie to get its due and have some references in the new movie. It's that we're recording the day after the Super Bowl, and so people that are old school Mario fans are just over the moon because the little teaser commercial had the cartoon Super Show rap in it. So,
yes.
That's what the commercial was, and it's like super unexpected. So they better do right by one Super Mario Brothers movie archive website and reference the 93 live action movie.
As P. Vera would say, like whoever was in charge of that, they did the work.
Oh yeah.
They're not new to this Mario thing, and I haven't actually watched the 93 movie in quite a while. I need to rewatch that because I'm not kidding. I bought that VHS tape back when I earned a couple bucks back in the day, and that sucker I watched on loop, and was blown away how it wasn't like the game, but I also didn't care because it was the Mario Brothers. It's a wonderful thing. Well, then let's stop talking Mario. All right, let's start talking Batman, and let's dive into The Lost Years. So this was actually the Batman Adventures.
Yes.
The Lost Years, number 1 through 5.
Yes, it was a miniseries.
Its own it earned its own separate title. Written by Hilary J. Bader, with art by Bo Hampton. It was released in 1998. Physical issues, collected in a trade paperback. Just recently, I don't know if it was last year or 2021, collected in Batman Adventures Nightwing Rising. That is available on my favorite app of all time, Hoopla. And also that collection is available on DC Universe Infinite Ultra. So which version, Mr. Haas, for this episode did you read?
Well, you know this, but I
do.
I have
people want to know.
I have the actual the original trade paperback that got released back in whatever it was, 98, 99.
Was it collected and released in 98?
Yes, it was released in 98, collected in 99, I believe.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I had one single issue that I bought the week it was released. I remember being in the comic book store back in the day. I was a big fan of the Batman Adventures comics. I was obviously the perfect demographic, perfect age for those when they came out, and I loved them so much because it was just like getting to experience the animated new episodes of the animated series while you're at school, on the bus, at home or whatever. And it was just another little window into that animated universe I was already super just in love with at the time. And I even had the infamous Harley Quinn issue, and I had it in a nice huge binder, and then that got stolen.
Ah,
And I'm super it's super sad. But
kind of world are we living in?
I know. But like that series was so good, and they ended up having many companion series. Most
Mhm.
Batman animated shows from then on would have companion series. So you would have
Yeah.
the Batman Adventures, Batman and Robin Adventures. What was the next one? Batman Gotham Adventures.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's been collected yet. But Batman Adventures and Batman and Robin Adventures have been collected into like 7 trade paperbacks. But in between, uh, it was really cool because when this series came out, because it does fill in the lost years, the gap between
It lives
the
up on
gap
its
between
promise.
animated, yeah, the gap between the animated series. But I remember when this series came out, it was this strange thing. I kind of did miss it. I was there. I got one issue. I think it must have been. I don't know if did they include the. Oh yeah, book 2 is the one that I got, and I remember it being very striking. The cover has Batman holding the Robin uniform
Mhm.
on it in the Batcave. So I bought it the week it came out. I bought this really cool little uh, comic book protector thing that was like a step above a bag and board to keep it
Mhm.
in really good condition. But I didn't go to the comic store every week or month back then, so that was the only issue I got. And then it was really kind of hard to track down over the years because it's this little mini series and not part of the main series. So you would always, when I would look at back issues, I would never kind of see this. And then a few years ago, I got to thinking about it and was able to track down the little collected edition, which is
What's
also
the paper?
the paper in the collected edition is
Yeah.
regular,
And it's
just
not
non-glossy,
glossy. Awesome.
paper. Yes, but
Fabulous.
I'd have to track down the issue because I want to say the issue had glossy paper, but I might be wrong about that. I
Any
might be wrong.
extras in that trade? I assume not.
No
I assume it like
extras.
ends on the very last page and it's like, yep, end of story.
It's just one of those pages that has like additional
Oh yeah.
Batman
Okay.
things to read.
No, that was the way in the 90s.
Oh
The way.
yeah,
If
buy
you're
more.
following Batman, buy more Batman
Yeah,
comics. Read more Batman
exactly.
comics.
Yeah.
No surprise here, I'm sure that you already know this, so maybe it's a surprise. I do not have the physical first edition trade or first release trade. It's not horribly priced online, actually. But I
Mhm.
mean, you're looking at a range for that collected trade anywhere between like 35 and $45.
Which is more
So
than you would expect for something like this,
yeah,
I would think.
I'm like, man, I don't know. I spent a lot of money on Batman stuff. So I was, and then when I found out that it was collected and released in this Nightwing Rising, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go the Hoopla route for this one. And these are, which I know you bought them. I haven't gotten them, and they've been reprinting some stories. So there's a Batgirl one. There is it Robin that's got
Is
Riddler
there a
on the
Robin
front?
one? I want to say it's a Robin one.
I
The
thought it was
Bat
a
Family.
Robin one, and it's got Riddler on the front, and
I've
then
got I've
there's a
got the Bat.
Catwoman, and then a
Oh.
Nightwing one.
Well, I've got the Batgirl one. And I was excited when they announced these because I thought they were like new
Hmm.
stories, and then I got them and noticed they were reprints. And then even on top of that, there are these little digest half-size
Yes.
books. So they are meant for like kids, because so like kids can more easily fit them in a backpack or whatever, and it's easier to read them.
They're
So I
they're look
stopped there because they don't really fit nicely on the shelf next to
yeah.
comic book size things.
Yeah, and so and I held off from them as well for that. I was really close because I mean they're regular $10 on some places. They're like $5 even. So I mean they're a pretty good deal. But for this, Hoopla has it like it fits the entire screen
Right.
of my iPad and reading it. So like, it was kind of blew up the image some. So that's how I read this.
Right.
How about your first time reading this, which you kind of explained, but do you
Yeah,
remember your
first time reading it was just a couple weeks ago because although I bought the trade, I, as us nerds probably identify with this, we get excited. Getting excited about buying the thing is almost, more than half of the experience. And then it just, when you get it, you're on to the next thing and it just goes into your backlog pile until you get excited about reading it again. Or like, it's like, well, I got excited, but I got this other stuff to read, or you get busy or whatever. At least I have it. So then I can, get the street cred later. But
there's a history here actually with you of you opening things for the first time to read for this show.
It actually is true. It's like that is part of, let's see, I'm on an episode. I have to do that. I have to complain about book paper size, which I have literally just did. Yeah, so I think I'm 2 for 2
you're like a bingo challenge now when you're
but
on.
I mean, part of this is just because like a little while ago, me and Pete, not that long ago, me and Pete did an episode of Batman Animation.
That's right.
On which episode?
Old Wounds.
Old Wounds, yes. And that is the episode that inspired this series, and we talked about it on that show. So go back and listen to that Old Wounds episode, because I'm like, man, there is that Lost Years story, and I've never read it. Maybe I'll have to do it on the book club. And then
I think we talked right after I listened to your guys' episode, and that's how we came to this. And also I think that's how you use this show to motivate you to open some things and be like,
that's true.
Because I need to read that.
I've got so many. I've got such the backlog, as we all do. And it's such a good. It's a good excuse to read things I haven't read before or want to read, and then you get to get a pal involved, and then we can kind of break it down and discuss it. It just makes the experience just a little bit more fun.
And it's fun. I mean, talking about it in any regards of like affinity for it, of like, oh my gosh, I read this all the time as a kid, or I go back and revisit this, but then also the newness of like, hey, guess what? First time that I just read it was a week ago. So it's like we're talking about something 25 years ago, and we just read it for the first time. There's not a whole lot of that with Batman stuff that we can say. Like both of us, it's our first time reading it, unless it's brand freaking new.
This is brand new, or unless it's the like random, 80s or 70s issue that it's not super accessible, that is not like in the upper echelon, like it's just part of the fabric kind of. A lot of people would say it's underrated or just underappreciated stories.
That's the word everybody likes to say. It's underrated.
Everything's
underrated.
It just, a lot of that stuff, Batman's been around for 80 years, right? So a lot of these stories, and he's been published concurrently that whole time. So a lot of these stories just kind of meld into the fabric of, and I one thing I fear is that, this is great that this show exists because you do have your monthly wrap-up episodes, and there are so many Batman books that come out that, if you don't read them monthly, like you guys are doing, a lot of these are just going to like fade off into obscurity. I mean, less so now because we do have things like DC Universe Infinite, so it'll be easier to go back and catch up. But like this story was released within our lifetime of Batman purview, and like I said, I even got one of the issues, so I could have read it, but now's the time.
And then you kind of did say you already answered this basically of like why the Lost Years, but I mean, go back and listen to Batman Animation. I think that's where it even drops, which I can put that in the comments once I post this episode. I can put in the comments a link to that because I mean it's another familiar voice, you and Pete talking part of something that's definitively related to what we're talking about now.
Yes.
But I mean, you kind of even said there of like maybe on the book club, and I think you and I texted, and you said you'd like to do the Lost Years.
Oh
So
yeah.
like, well, then we're gonna make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I'll try to say it in a nutshell, but I love Batman the Animated Series.
No,
If you didn't know, a
breaking
lot of
news.
it's really I've always been very fascinated. People seem to approach that the split between the Batman the Animated Series and the new Batman Adventures, you know, in interesting ways. Some people consider them that don't make any distinction between the two. Like
Yeah.
that the whole thing is just the animated series. Some people like one, don't like the other, or vice versa. Some and I tend to I do like them as a whole, but it's hard for me to I always tend to forget more about the new Batman Adventures. I don't put them in the same bucket so much, even though the storytelling is great, the continuity is great, the art style I appreciate both for different reasons. But it's always a little hard for me to reconcile them both as like a whole. And I've always been kind of looking for that missing piece. And that's kind of what the Lost Years is. But one of the promises of the new Batman Adventures that you didn't get so much of in the original animated series is this Bat family constant continuity kind of feeling. And they didn't quite live up to that in the series. You know, there were only a couple of episodes where, you know, you look at this cover of this trade and you've got Batman and Nightwing and Robin and Batgirl on the cover together, but there are only a couple of episodes where all of them are together in an episode, and none of the episodes have all four of them like together in the same like scene. I think
same space.
And so they jump around the continuity a little bit, and there wasn't as much lore as I would have wanted in those episodes. I wish that the new Batman Adventures could have had like double the episodes or something, you know.
The jumping in continuity. So make sure that we come back to that, because I do have a question for you, and I just didn't have the time to watch as much other stuff as I wanted to from the animated series and everything. Because I do have a question on that. But I mean, you kind of already said that this is almost promised as a setup of bridging that gap a little bit between Batman the Animated Series, the new Batman Adventures.
Right.
I am one that always put it under one entire umbrella. Because even in, like, buying the DVDs, it was the Batman Animated Series, or
volume 4, the new Batman Adventures. Yeah.
Exactly. So I fell into that gap, like into that as well. But I do, especially like now, it's like, well, I want to be accurate and say, like, you know, this was the new Batman Adventures, you know, new openings and blah blah blah. Even though the original animated series opening is on like the digital episodes of the new Batman Adventures,
because as they aired, it was part of an hour, right, with the Superman the animated series.
Yep. But I mean, so this one aims to tell, I mean, the selling point, like you've even said, is like it's the Lost Years. How did Dick Grayson in this universe, how did Dick Grayson go from Robin to Nightwing? Now, another thing I wanted to track down, and I think I looked up the wrong thing on Hoopla, and then I ran out of time. I wanted to read the original story of Nightwing's creation, which I tracked down, which was Tales of the Teen Titans number 44.
Right.
Check that out. Writers Marv Wolfman, George Perez, penciler George Perez, RIP. But then I'm an idiot. I don't know why I didn't just like download the Judas Contract and read that. I've never read the Judas Contract, but it was like in like book 3 of that story is where we get
part of that.
Yeah, part of that. And I really wanted to do the work so that I could compare and contrast. So I don't know if it's putting you on the spot, if you're familiar with that comic story.
We looked it up. Not offhand, I don't want to be inaccurate, but I did look it up when we were doing Batman animation. That whole history is a little
fuzzy, or not clunky.
It's a little clunky,
Very...
comic booky, because in the comics you did have Bruce Wayne moved out at the penthouse, but then Dick Grayson went off to college, but he was still Robin. He was like Robin, but not with Batman for a while. And then he's with the Teen Titans, and then years later, then the whole Nightwing thing happens, and then they kind of build it back into the lore, and then that lore is kind of changed as comic continuity keeps resetting also. So it's flipped flopped back and forth between Robin quit and Batman fired Robin or whatever, and it's and to each his own on which one of those is your preferred version. I mean, I guess the good thing is that because the comics are a little clunky, and it's such an interesting thing of a lot of us kind of immediately would jump to, oh, the way the comics did it is gospel, but then a lot of times the way that another form of media will kind of distill it and reimagine it will end up being the pervasive canon. And I think nowadays it's interesting, a lot of this animation stuff in this period has like solidified a lot more than like a current like movie canon. People will be quicker to jump like, oh, the movie can't do that, like, oh, the Joker killed the Waynes. No, but
the animated series, that's the way.
The animated,
that's
exactly
the way it is.
It's like that's back when Mr. Freeze was created in Batman the Animated Series. That's our modern Mr. Freeze is really from the animated series. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing. And so for that reason, the kind of old wounds Nightwing origin has always stuck out to a lot of fans, including me, more than what the comics. Yeah. And then when the comics came out, that's was a little bit before my time, and it's been hard for me to get it. I know you've read Crisis, the original Crisis, lately. I think it just takes up that same mental space for me, where I'm like, it's not really. It's like a Batman story when him becoming Nightwing, but it's not like, it's a Batman character, but not really a Batman story. So it's hard for me to kind of sink in, dig into it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a natural progression to tell a Nightwing origin, to bridge that gap. I think in this story, handled really well. You'd almost think that Paul Dini and Bruce Timm are somehow involved, I think, and they're not. And yet the look still matches the look of the series. A great blend, I think, of animated series and New Batman Adventures. I think just the look of it.
And that was probably the most surprising part of the book. How the art in the book, you start reading it and the art kind of goes from, you start out with like a animated series look, even with Batgirl in the animated series outfit, and by the time the book's over, you've subtly transitioned into the New Batman Adventures. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Brilliant. It's brilliant. But I think out the gate here, and I mean, it's the point. Even though you're a third person in this, like you're just watching all this unfold. I think this is the story is told almost from Dick's perspective, in that Batman's a dick. Like, I think it kind of comes off a little strong of Batman's an asshole, like out the gate. And it almost just kind of seems too of like Dick's a little too quick to just be angry with him. Like, I won't say that that's my issue, but I guess you could say that's maybe my only issue with this. And I know we only have 5 issues to tell the story. One of the issues isn't really even dedicated to this story. It's dedicated to a subplot, Tim Drake. More on him later. Right. Everyone loves the Drake.
Well, I feel like for me, that growing tension and emotion came across better in the animated form in Old Wounds. And I was bringing that with me when I read this, so that didn't jump out as me as much. But when you do read the book, like, it does feel like it happens quite fast. You almost feel like because it's not like we had too many other growing tension stories between Batman and Robin before this. In the animated series, it's usually whatever. But But then again, you can also kind of, even though this is the Lost Years, this is fills in the gaps. You do have some more gaps in here because arguably this takes place after, like, you know, uh, Sub-Zero,
Okay.
right?
Hey, guess what? That was my continuity question.
Yeah. Okay.
Because for some reason I thought that Dick and Barbara already knew, and I thought Sub-Zero
But they don't know
kind
each.
of
They don't
proved
know.
that.
Oh,
I
does
thought
it?
I see. I
I
don't
don't
know.
think
That's what
so.
I really wanted to rewatch Sub-Zero, because then I started to of course I started to question myself, because I was like,
Right.
wait, but Sub-Zero then technically comes before this. Yeah, it's all is revealed to Barbara in this story. Because Sub-Zero,
Right.
I thought that they knew, because I know specifically they are on a date, and then she gets kidnapped and all that. But I thought she knew by then. And then I remember, at least towards the end. So I always think about it because I watched the DVDs so much on
Yeah.
Batman the Animated Series Volume 3. At the end was like
Right.
Batgirl's return, in which I'm like,
Yeah.
but in that episode she didn't know who they were
No.
behind the masks. So then,
And Sub-Zero
like,
takes place. It's like animated series, Sub-Zero, The Lost Years, and
yeah.
then
So
the
that
new
was something
Batman
I really
Adventures.
wanted to rewatch Sub-Zero for that, but I
Yeah.
couldn't make it happen,
I
because
don't think they find out in Sub-Zero.
there's also a whole thing of like, you can feel totally confident, and all it takes is one person to
Oh
be like,
yeah.
really? And then you just like shatter any confidence you had
That's
that you know
usually
the
me.
answer. And I'm like,
That's usually me.
I don't know. Oh shit! I need to go read everything. I need to go watch everything, because I
Yeah.
can't put out misinformation, and I'll get my back
Yeah,
card
yeah.
taken away and all that. But
Yeah.
I wondered about that, because, and that's what was at least interesting in reading this too, was that fact of,
The continuity I did bring from it is the fact that, when Batgirl first appears in the animated series, her and
Mhm.
Robin are kind of at odds with each other. They're like kind of annoyed with each other
Mhm.
as the heroes, but then
a little bit
as
of jealousy on Robin's part. Of like, hey,
exactly,
I'm the sidekick
you
here.
can't just barge in here.
That's
I'm with Batman, but yeah, but
that's the
then
kids' version of like, F you. It's like, you can't just barge in
this
here.
isn't
It's
a
like, oh,
girls' club. Yeah, but Barbara and Dick Grayson are, an item, and that becomes really apparent in Sub-Zero. And I feel
Yeah.
like that you take that from Sub-Zero into this,
Sure.
and that's kind of, and what was great about Old Wounds and in the first part of this is that you do see that they've been kind of together for a while, but there's been, the growing tension between him and Batman, and the fact that he hasn't told Barbara has like really been tearing him, in
Yeah.
two different directions.
So Bruce's interruption and not caring that he's on a date. It's you need to get here. Effective, but then also like down in the sewer, the opening scene basically, and following the criminals, and how Batman's even telling him, excuse me, of like, no, it's a dead end, in which, I mean, he's right, because then Robin around the corner gets hit and all that stuff. There is some mounting, so they do build on incidents and small little scenes to get to the point here. I just thought, like, out the gate, that Batman seemed a little bit too much, like, right away, of like, he's not fully likable.
Right.
But then especially when he follows what's his name, with Jimmy, and he crashes through the window, and Jimmy's at the apartment with his wife and kid, in which Robin even says, and I think this is portrayed, or this is done really, really well in the episode in Old Wounds.
Yes.
Focusing on Robin looking at the family, looking at Batman and Jimmy, and back and forth. But he warns him, as Batman breaks in, scaring the crap out of the kid and the wife, and holds the guy up, and Robin even says, Batman not like this, not in front of his family. And Batman says, the sooner he talks, the better. That almost seems, I don't know of in this universe, like, I don't know of a moment that matches that for Batman, where I'm kind of like, like, it almost seems like it is maybe too much in the animated series.
Well, I think it's supposed to.
He would get, I feel like he would get Jimmy and leave, or he'd watch until Jimmy's by himself and then do that. I almost feel like this is going further than this Batman has done before.
Yeah, at this
So,
point, yeah.
and I know
mean,
that
and
that's the point.
and
That's
that's
why.
not exclusive to this. Like you start to see that little, and we talk about this in the Batman animation episode, me and Pete, like that a-hole Batman edge kind of
Mhm.
comes around here, and it
Yeah.
kind of persists a little bit in the new Batman Adventures, and it only kind of it levels out, but it's still there in Justice League Unlimited, and especially in Batman Beyond. You can tell like that's where that version
Oh
of
yeah.
Bruce Wayne kind of ends up.
Hmm. I think that's. I mean, I don't know. I guess any more. I'd also say maybe a more mature story. I could go with it in the sense of Batman building up this because yet again it's like same old story of Joker's out. This guy continues to work with Joker of like, okay, at some point I gotta get your attention to knock this off. Uh just seems it seems a little stronger for me in this universe.
Yeah,
But it does get the job done of like this is kind of like Robin's breaking point because he
right,
bails, which he doesn't
right,
do. In this
right.
universe, he never does that, which I think I've said it on here before. I've said it elsewhere, but I think like my favorite Robin interpretation period is animated series Lauren Lester voicing Dick Grayson.
Yeah,
Like that's just always been, and I think might always be my favorite version of Robin.
yeah.
So damn good. And it is Dick Grayson, college student. But like I don't know, it works for me and I like that. So I mean Batgirl stays with Batman in tracking down these crooks and stuff, and Dick's unaware because he bailed on him. And Bruce shows Barbara everything. And it leads to them going to take down the Joker. Robin's late to the party, or Dick, I guess, is late to the party. So he's already pissed at Bruce, hasn't seen him since the night that he bailed on him. And then in finding out that Bruce basically revealed everything to Barbara, took her to go take down the Joker, leads to, I mean, them taking down the goons with somebody watching from a building across the way.
Mm.
The moment, I mean, I just keep talking about your and Pete's conversation, but it's fresh in my mind of like, I think Pete even said it's heartbreaking, but I mean, Robin punches Batman in the
Right.
face with
Right.
intent to do harm.
Yeah.
Ryan Haas. I'm glad that I first read this as a man in his 30s because if I was a kid
Oh
and
my
I saw
goodness.
this, it would have destroyed me.
Yeah.
It would
It's
have
like
destroyed me.
it's like that moment in the Batman where he's just like, "You son of a bitch."
You son of a bitch.
Exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
That's what that
I
punch
don't
means.
break this down. Does this? I mean, you're a Robin guy, a
Yeah.
sidekick punching Batman in the
Yeah.
face.
It's such a memorable moment. It's not anything super grand. It's not, I mean, it's up, and now at this point, that moment is up there with major, there's like major continuity lore things for Batman for me. And you've got, and I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic here, but you have the Waynes getting murdered. You have Barbara Gordon getting shot in the chest. You have Jason Todd, dying with Batman holding his body. And like this is there with that. Like that Grayson punching Batman and tossing his Robin costume. I'm done. Like that is a seismic moment in Batman continuity where Batman and Robin, that first Batman and Robin, that pairing shatters. And so that from then on kind of alters everything. It alters Dick Grayson as a person. It alters how Batman approaches future proteges, or ensures that he will continue to have many, many proteges. I don't know, but it's a very
All the
memorable moment.
proteges.
Yeah.
It's one thing I always stand on in none of these sidekicks would exist if Batman didn't start it all. So a bugaboo of mine definitely in stories is when a sidekick comes along puts up a stands tall, is like, well, you can't make me stop this. You need to let me be a sidekick or whatever like that. And it's like, that is kind of annoying because like, well, he was here first and he does it all first and he could be all of you. in a couple of seconds. But the history with the Grayson character, because despite any comic you read, he is only a year. Robin himself is only a year younger than Batman. Technically. There's, I don't know, and then the relationship formed here in this show with the two is, and then you've gotten moments, the hush moment that Jeff Loeb even wrote of like, Dick has earned, basically he's earned his stripes, he's earned his right to talk to me like however he wants to. All that stuff. I do take that with this version as well.
Yeah.
But that is like you have two allies breaking up, crossing a line of like a moment that you can never go back from, because after he like fully decks him so much, he knocks Batman on his ass.
It's not just like a slap.
Yeah,
which I don't know it's like a punch.
I think maybe they're like, they did a bitch slap first. Like, you know what? I just don't think that this carries the weight that it needs to. So let's go full on punch.
It's not it's like a shove, like get it back off, man. It's just
get
like,
off
it's
me, you
punch.
big meanie. No, it's a full deck him in the face, and then takes off the cape and the when he removes the eyepiece, it's like, what? That's Dick Grayson? I never saw that coming. And he throws that, and then he takes off and he's done. Yeah. And I mean, following up in the Batcave where he's throwing the suit on the floor. Pretty good moment. Well, it's very nice of him. Throws the suit on the floor, but then he does pick it up and he folds it nicely. So good for him.
Yeah.
Maybe his part-time job is like folding at the Gap or something. But as he's up the steps and Batman comes in and and sees it, and he's like, I wish you luck, and then he corrects himself. Instead of saying Robin, he says Dick.
I know, that was a good moment. That was a good show. Yeah.
And I mean, the story then jumps to basically almost Nightwing year one. There you go. Nightwing begins, where he's traveling to Brazil, and he's doing like theater gymnastics with guys, and then
just kind of taking a page from the Bruce Wayne playbook of like, well, let me travel the world and let me see if I can figure anything else out about myself, figure out what I want to be.
And for the sake of like origin stuff and everything, like, I'm glad they didn't spend too much time off doing this. It's like one issue, which of course has to run into a rogue, a Batman rogue, so he runs into Two-Face, you know, and stops a drug operation. But he does learn some valuable, I don't know who's it. I don't think I hit my head. The Invisibles.
Like the Invisible Tribesmen,
And he learned something from them. So there's benefits in the story, not just, he just goes to another country and, look at that, Two-Face is here, I'll stop them. It is building, and he goes through this, what he's going to be.
Builds in some skills and the Nightwing imagery,
Yeah.
So to build.
He does that in two different spots. So in here and then up in the Himalayas, which continues to evolve toward that ultimate story of Nightwing. But I do appreciate how in between those two issues is the Tim Drake story. This Tim Drake story. And it wouldn't surprise me if there's maybe the generation or two below you and I, where this animated series, that is their defining Tim Drake origin story. That's their version. Where for us, we instantly can pick up like, there's some Tim Drake and Jason Todd-ness here, blended in both, And I do wonder if some generations are like, no, this is Tim Drake. Tim Drake's dad. What's his name? I forget. Whatever his dad's name. Like he works for Two-Face.
Yeah,
he works for Two-Face, and Tim's just stuck at home by himself. It's like, actually, that's not how the real. Excuse me. That's not how the real comic book.
The real comics.
The story of Tim Drake.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't know. Let's take a time out from Dick and let's go to Tim then. We already got. So this is actually, told in the Sins of the Father episode in the new Batman Adventures / Batman the Animated Series. But you are a massive Tim Drake fan. So in reading this issue, how do you, like I said, they do a pretty good job adapting this, but I guess what's your take on this version, this origin of Tim Drake?
Well, what's cool about what they do here that they don't do in the show is that they kind of go back and evoke something that they did in the comics. So in the comics, they had part of Tim Drake's major origin is that he's a good detective. He figures out the identities of Batman and Robin, and then he also ends up. Oh, he was also at the circus. The night that the Graysons were murdered. So he got to see. So that's how he was able to put together that who Robin was, and then by extension who Batman was. So they go and kind of do something similar here, where they are like, oh yeah, guess what? Tim Drake was there during this other Batman incident, so he got was able to kind of see Batman do his thing.
Great nod to the comics of your first quote unquote tease of Tim Drake.
Exactly.
In the actual comics, where somebody's watching Dick Grayson, right. And that was in year 3, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so like Batman 436, 437.
That's where you find out. That's where you see, Dick Grayson and Tim Drake meet each other.
That's what I thought of right away. Was like, oh, that's a cool nod of the Tim Drake-ness of comic book lore. So carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. No. So that's what was a cool advantage of this book, is that they were able to put in some more comic book inspired lore, Tim Drake lore specifically, back into this story. So it gives it some extra context, especially once they kind of show how Batman affects the larger world. And that's really kind of what Tim Drake has always kind of represented too. It's just interesting to see the twist on it. They enhance the twist on it that you see in this book here. And Tim Drake's a Batman fan, even though his dad's like a crook, like he's a Batman fan. He's got a Batman posters on his walls. He's got Batman coffee mugs, like,
a Batarang.
He's got and now he's got a for real Batarang. Yes, yeah, exactly.
I mean, what we all wanted.
Right.
And now we all have, thanks to NECA.
Yeah.
But and I think there is something relatable for a kid his age, even younger, is there's always like a comfort item for a kid. I mean, hell, you have a child,
teddy bear.
There's some kind of comfort thing there, and I do like the Batarang as like his comfort.
Yeah,
they emphasize. I think that's a great what do you want to say? A great point. It's a good symbol at the very
of
end.
It's a good symbol of like, well, this is what Batman represents to the good guys.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is, and that's fully like 90s Tim Drake. That's what he was, like fully wholesome, good. I don't know, just someone easy to root for. Yeah, Batman means a lot to him. Batman needs a Robin. It doesn't need to be me. I'm just saying, Batman needs you. Batman needs a Robin. The natural abilities of this Tim Drake. I mean, you've got one issue to tell this stuff. So this Tim Drake, he's got to be pretty much loaded. He just comes from a crap house.
Well, he's like the Aladdin of Gotham City, where he's like he's for real. Wow. He's like he's got this athletic prowess, built out of the life that has been handed to him. He's like, well, his dad's kind of a crook and his mom's not around, and he's got to kind of survive as he sees fit in this crazy town, with criminals all around him. So of course he's got to stay out of trouble, but he's a good kid at heart, but he's got to do some shady things just to kind of get by. But if he would but instead of a genie with the magic bottle or a magic lamp, you get like Batman with like a magic Robin costume. So,
man, I am totally blanking on. Aladdin going down the street singing. Yeah, like Tim Drake, I like Batman. My dad works for Two-Face.
Yeah, like I'm reading this page like here, and like that song is like in my head. I'm like that, he's like a little Aladdin,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Where's Abu? Is he way in the back? Oh wow. Kind of. Fun story here too. Of like also kind of living the kid's fantasy of like I get to save Batman. This is like we need to correct the wrongs of Batman in my basement. So let's have
Oh my
Tim Drake
gosh.
save Batman back to the Batcave, which I don't hate Batman in my base. I don't.
I always liked it as a kid too. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it just, I don't know, sequence of events. He saves Batman, ends up in the Batcave, explores. Oh, it's Bruce Wayne, and then takes the Robin suit, which is really funny because Tim Drake is definitely smaller than Dick Grayson, but grabs
Right.
Grayson's Robin suit and it fits perfect.
Right,
Comics.
right,
Who cares? It's
right.
comics. Whatever.
Exactly. We've
Um,
already changed art styles. It's fine.
yeah. And I mean, to your credit, like you said, I think you really see where we well, I think actually so this is book 4, as they label them.
Mhm.
You see in book 3, because they don't have to do Gotham City because they're in Brazil. It's a totally new setting. I think that's where you definitely, in this version of Dick and stuff, you start to see that transition to Batman Adventures.
Right. Right.
And then
Yeah.
definitely in
You're
this.
out of Gotham, and then by the time you come back, and time passes too. So you've
Mhm.
got when you are with Dick Grayson out of the country, you get like journal entries, and so you kind of follow the time where it's like day 47, day
Yeah.
102.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, at the end of it, Alfred reminds Bruce as like the capper of like, it's been a year today.
Exactly.
And Bruce hasn't thought about it. It's like, oh, Bruce has. I know Bruce Wayne.
Always,
He's
always
thinking
thinking
about
about
it.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
So we have basically Tim Drake's origin. So we've got our new Robin, and then it's back to Dick to kind of like, this is I think in reading this too, to me was like, oh yeah, I guess like, where does the Nightwing symbol come into play? The mullet's already there. So, I mean, it's in full effect.
Right.
But this does get us the last piece, basically, of that Nightwing puzzle. I guess I was just surprised of like, oh, look, we're bringing in the demon's head. We're
I
bringing in
know.
Ra's al Ghul. I didn't. Okay, cool. Because this this was omitted from Old Wounds, right?
Correct.
Okay. Because it
Yeah, you
definitely just
definitely
seemed
did not have
totally
racial gold.
fresh to me of like, wait,
The
I
only
don't
thing in
think
Old
we
Wounds is you had
saw.
Joker and a radar disruptor. That's it's like
Look at that special guest, Mark Hamill, everybody.
I
Thanks
know.
for coming on the Batman Book Club.
To me, the Joker. Like I just love hearing Pete. Pete was so excited about because
Afterward, he probably just puts that on loop just so you can hear your Joker. I mean, makes sense. There's I mean, it's called the Spirit of the Eternal Soul statue, which is basically the Nightwing symbol. Ra's al Ghul
Right.
needs it. He gets some people to go and try and get it. And Dick hears about this as he moves on to his journey, goes to stop these fools, gets thrown off a cliff, as one does, and then an avalanche falls on him. And this part made me think of in Begins, after Bruce falls into the lake fighting or training with Descartes,
Right.
and he comes up and Descartes says, rub your chest, your arms will take care of themselves. And
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan has said of like, we just thought it sounded good. I really hope that nobody took that as like, that's life advice.
Right.
Same thing here. So he's underneath an avalanche. Breathe, Grayson. Breathe and think. There's got to be whatever you do, don't fall asleep. Oh, okay. That's how you survive an avalanche. Just don't fall asleep.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. And then somebody punches through and then pulls him out. And that's where you do see the stature of this person, the coloring, and it is like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Here we
there's
go.
Nightwing's coming.
Yeah.
This is it. So
Yeah.
how's he gonna get this suit up? This guy? Is he just gonna strip this dude, take his clothes, leave him naked in the mountains? I don't know.
He just got an extra suit
Yeah, there you go. Of course.
in the bag.
I mean, tell the inclusion of this. How does this work for you? Because I don't have this to compare, like I said at the beginning of our talk, with comic version of getting all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now the comic version is also gets also strange because there's like the Kryptonian Nightwing, and there's
okay.
like I'm gonna get that wrong, but there's like Nightwing and Flamebird or something, and then there's I think that there's a connection there between the Kryptonian one and Dick Grayson's Nightwing. So I mean, that's where a lot of the comic continuity gets strange. They brought them back years later, the Kryptonian stuff in action comics, but yeah, like, but yeah, we don't need all that.
No.
So but this is a fine way to do it here, because they even try to do some of this in Titans, the TV show, and I didn't particularly love how Nightwing comes up with the mantle in that show. It was
He
kind
went to
of
prison
messy.
and kind of like looped out a
Yeah,
little bit or something.
yeah, that's kind of what I remember
And
from
I was
that too. And I'm
like,
what? Exactly. So like, this is a little bit easier to digest for me, and of course, it's like
Sure.
it's meant for a younger audience, but still, I'm just like, you don't need to go that hard on stuff. Sometimes it's like, oh, he's
It's
got
an
a
animated show, a comic based on an
right,
animated show, and yet they still took like a semi-grounded approach. And I'm like, this is how
right.
you can keep it
You've
grounded
got
and
the
go
flying
stretch it a
guy.
little bit.
You've got the invisible shield, bada bing, bada boom. You got a Nightwing costume. Like
Yeah,
that's good. Good for me.
yeah.
He's already got the hair. It's fine.
It looks great. Without the hair, it's not complete. And I mean, and then you get that great payoff at the end of how he does, Bruce, and it is just Bruce that's training Tim, but I mean Alfred and Barbara's there. Barbara had some training
Right.
because she's dressed up in the outfit too, and Dick just arrives, and I mean it's pretty. I mean, I do I do appreciate really quick, and of Barbara of when Dick arrives and he's like, and she says, "You've changed." He said, "So have you. You miss me? Don't even go there."
Yeah.
Because it is kind of like you just up and left, dude. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
she should deck you in the face. Like,
Yeah.
like, it
Well,
does
not to
wrap up.
mention they like this story also like has like even way early on in the story, like when Batgirl is in the Batmobile with Batman, she's already kind of like flirting with Batman, like
That's
already.
weird. Hey,
Yeah. Like
hey,
it was
come on,
already
Barbara.
there.
Ugh,
Yeah.
ugh. You know what? Brian Azzarello for the Killing Joke movie. That's what he saw. He
I
read
know.
this and he was
He's like,
like,
this must be canon.
Let's take this further."
Kids love
That's
the animated series.
yeah. The kids have always wanted Batgirl and Batman to get together. Let's make it happen. I'm not surprised by this. But kind of like you said, the cover of book 5 is, or no, the cover of your trade is all 4 of them
Yeah.
together.
And book
Yeah,
5.
like such a great point that I've never even thought about before. Like, how often have we seen all 4 of them together in the
Right.
same scene, Bat family? Never.
Right.
And you don't even get it in this book.
Right.
Because the second to last page and panel is Batman,
Call me.
Robin, and Batgirl.
Boom.
So if you're not
Exactly.
Robin anymore, what do we call you? Call me. You turn the page, full page, only Dick as Nightwing. And so you don't even get them all together
Now
either.
the story's over. Like it's like
I have a new suit and I have a new name. My name is Nightwing here in Gotham. I don't know.
yeah.
So it does end, I think, as it should. Because as it promises of kind of like bridging the gap between the two worlds. And it's like, well, you're not reading this because you're like, I want nothing but Nightwing stories of this, because you do end up getting those in Gotham Adventures, like you said, or something. So this is supposed to just be that story in between the two. So it does end, I think, as it should. And I don't know, it ends on, it's a good moment to end on. So I feel complete when it ends, of like, perfect. Yeah, that makes total sense. Of course.
Yeah. Like you don't have, it's interesting because you don't necessarily, you don't have the framing device that you had in Old Wounds, where you had the two, like Batman hasn't kind of interacted with Nightwing yet, but Nightwing and Robin have talked or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So here that kind of doesn't happen. He just kind of shows up at the end, which is fine.
Before moving on into some favorites, I mean, I've checked off all of the points I wanted to talk about. Is there anything we haven't mentioned yet that you wanted to?
We'll get. Well, I mean, okay, you're asking. So, like, I think it's worth noting the least interesting part of this whole book is like Batman himself, because I mean, he is just he's part of the instigator here, but all of the chess pieces of the Bat family is what changes the most. It's not like Batman Batman changes the least, really. And I don't know, and then whenever Batman is there, sometimes he feels, I wouldn't say kind of off, not exactly like the animated series one would be. Like, I can almost imagine some of these lines from like more of a swashbuckling Denny O'Neil Batman. Like, he's like, he's a little too chatty, like early on in the book where the when the criminals show up and Batman looks at him and he's just like, human vermin, what's your rush? As he's like bantering I'm like, I don't, he did,
Yeah,
it's a little out there for
that's
that
Robin.
Batman.
That's
That's
not
he
you.
doesn't need to do that. But
So how
yeah,
did
I
you
think we
phrase
kind
that?
of covered it.
How did you phrase that though? Did you say least likable?
No, not least likable. He's like the least
Interesting.
he's like the least interesting part of
I do agree with that. Yeah, I think
the
more.
story.
He just kind of he
And he
does
changes the
seem
least.
one dimensional in that he's just kind of a dick.
Yeah.
It doesn't show other than he's just sitting in the recliner by himself, looking at the fire at the end of book 3 when Alfred reminds
Yeah.
it's been a year, and he said that he hadn't thought of it or whatever. And then it's like then when I guess the most you get out of him is the Tim Drake issue.
I think so.
But yeah, but then even with Dick's return at the end, which I understand too, of like the point is like this whole thing is about Dick Grayson and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just really quick and just acceptance. Their little tennis playing in book 1 of Dick, Barbara, and Bruce is very like, you leave the left side open. You can, and it's almost like you said, instigates, because he puts down Dick in that too.
Right.
And yeah, you compare with Dick's journey in this, and then Tim's journey in this, and then Barbara too, who was like, her world is kind of like flipped.
Yeah,
with this story as well too, and she's left hanging by basically her boyfriend, and then basically finds out that like, holy shit, I've been fighting crime with you all this time and I didn't know it was you, and all that stuff too. And yeah, I do agree with you that Batman's not the main character, but I think you could play a little bit more into not making Batman as stubborn, or like a little bit of growth there on the stubbornness, rather than just fully accepting of just like, no, drop your date, you need to come fight crime now, and then
it makes
I hope you
sense
find your way, Dick, or something like, I don't know, something.
No, it makes sense in a way, because one, he is Batman. 2, he's farther along in his journey than the other ones, and we kind of already know where things end up, so there's not a ton of wiggle room for Batman to.
Batman doesn't wiggle either.
Doing, and Batman does not wiggle or frolic. He
doesn't frolic or wiggle. Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a good point too. Since this is the Batman book club, it's not the Nightwing book club. This is the Batman book club. So let's hop into some favorites. What was your favorite part of the Lost Years?
Favorite part of the Lost Years. I want to say, when I was reading it, and then I want to say it's probably like the entirety maybe of book 3, because that represents, it's kind of a strange pick maybe, but that kind of gets to the heart of why this story stands out the most, where it's like, oh, I wasn't expecting to see that, because that's when you hit book 3, you truly feel like, oh, I'm reading something that has never been revealed before. Up until then, you're like, okay, I've kind of seen this in the animated series, and this is like a different version of events, and you get to book 3, you're like, whoa, I've never seen that in animation or other Batman comics. This is truly an untold story. So as soon as you get to that, you kind of it starts to pay for the price of its admission, like once you get to that point.
Nice. My favorite part, and it's weird because this almost answers like, or is the explanation like when I take a favorite panel, but it's not, but it is the last page of book 2, um, of Dick folding up the Robin suit and leaving it
Yeah.
on the computer and Batman finding it. Because I know what I've said about him and how he is just Batman is almost like, I hope you find your way, blah blah blah. But it's like looking at those, you almost don't even need dialogue either, and I think it still hits.
Yeah.
And I know everything I just said, but also the character of Batman too is like you do think that's genuine as he's talking out loud.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you do.
As and I don't know, like this is a complete changing of it's a definitive moment in Batman lore
Yeah.
when Dick
Yeah.
removes the suit and he's like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And whether it is the comics or the animated series, even in Titans, the live action series,
for
if we ever get to that point in live action movies, like that's a definitive moment is when that Robin is like, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I'm Robin, no more.
Yeah.
How about a favorite panel?
You know, I maybe would pick the towards the end of book 3, where Dick is burning the costume and kind of looking at it. Maybe not my favorite panel, like art wise in the book, but it's probably my favorite for just for what the story represents. Like
Yeah.
at the heart of it, this book focuses on Nightwing more than anybody, or Dick Grayson more than anybody, going
Yeah.
from Robin to Nightwing. And it's just like a really, like, there's a lot of these really pivotal moments for that character in this that you don't get to experience in any other format. And so just it's like yet another is in that book, in that panel, is like right after that fire ends is like where the animation style changes. It's like, which I guess it kind of changes earlier in the issue, really, when you see the new Batman Adventures Two-Face. But you know what I mean.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
like a continual passage of time, passing a torch from personas for him, and then it leaves the door open for other people to take up, the Robin mantle too.
Yeah. For me, it precedes a moment that hurts, but I do like, I don't know. It tells a lot, even if there wasn't any dialogue. It's the top panel of page 50 on digitally. It's book 2, where it is Batman and Robin face to face with Batgirl in the back. And I mean, things change. I don't think of Robin saying that when I hear those words. I definitely hear a little bit of Keaton.
Oh yeah,
Things
that's
change.
a great panel.
And he says, the game's over, Batman, I quit. Like that encapsulates this story. Like this is the moment that does change it all, And I know I just said about Batman folding it up, those images and stuff, like this scene is where he's like, he's done.
Yeah.
It's right
I would
before
have picked
the
the punch, but that felt like,
that one hurts.
It hurts, and I've talked about that in
exactly. And then I mean, we've been talking the whole time about this story adapted in animation. Like I said, I mean, 2 different episodes. Volume 4 of the DVD set, Sins of the Father, and then Old Wounds, in which Old Wounds, like I said, Batmanimation, you and Pete talked about, which would have been, I think, episode 17. I feel like it was maybe episode 17. I'll put it in the thread of this post on Twitter.
Sure. It's pretty late. It's episode 17. It's pretty late in the run.
Okay. Yeah. And then also Sins of the Father is the Tim Drake portion. But I mean, from Sins of the Father, let's see, Old Wounds I did watch semi recently, and I think I started to watch Sins of the Father. Wait, hold on. What did I just say? Old Wounds I have watched recently. Yes. Sins of the Father. There we go. I started and haven't finished. But I do think they do a good job of adapting this material.
Yes.
Okay. Listen to all of his thoughts on that Batman Animation episode. I'm just plugging that. Batman Animation. You have any final thoughts?
But I think there's still room here. It is so awful and sad that we don't have Kevin Conroy around with us anymore. Because he was such a great guy and obviously an amazing Batman.
Mm-hmm.
But I think so it would be obviously just kind of not, it wouldn't be great to like try to revive the animated series without him as Batman.
I agree.
But I feel like there's even to a larger degree of like bringing back the Batman 60s animated stuff without Adam West. But you know, like Kevin Conroy is this Batman. You just can't do it without him.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this story showing something like all this backstory with Nightwing. I think there's so much uncharted territory with Robin and Nightwing between this story, you know, seeing that transition, and then Batman Beyond. Oh, Nightwing has he got stories. They could do a couple of really cool animated things with that concept, I think. Maybe even in the same movie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be really cool. So I think there's some room for more adaptation of some of this material into animation if they were clever about it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think animation in this world should be done because of the passing of Conroy. Like without him, like you just said too, those Batman 66 animated movies. I mean, when Adam West passed, he'd been done voicing for that second one, so the work was already done there. But yeah, I think that stops with him. You lose your Batman, I think you're kind of done. But yeah, what are your final thoughts on the Lost Years then as a whole?
I thought it was a really enjoyable read. It does a lot of things really well. It does a kind of masterful job of taking all the chess pieces of the Bat family and rearranging them to where they need to be by the end of the story, and kind of gives everybody little, you know, Nightwing, Dick Grayson has the major arc, but all the other characters have a lot to do and a lot to kind of go through in it. So I was really happy and pleased with how well the old wounds and the sins of the father episodes kind of were able to kind of book in the story, and how Vader was able to take those and add new stuff in, and it really works really well. I feel like I mean, the parts with Nightwing, I don't know. It could be maybe a little bit. Some of it felt like maybe a little tonally off from maybe an animated series episode. Where I'm like, oh, if I took the book 3 and parts of book 5 and they were reinterpreted into an animated series episode, maybe there would be some changes there. Maybe it would feel a little bit more in that world. But maybe that's just me, because once you do, like I was saying, once you do get to this part of the story, you're like in such uncharted territory, it's hard to like reconcile that. But reading through the story, I think it's a really cool missing link in the Batman adventures, and it keeps, because it hasn't been fully interpreted into another format, it makes this book a really unique experience and a unique pick for fans of the series, or specifically the Bat family. So obviously right up my alley.
Yeah, I think even though, because the new Batman Adventures Volume 4 of the DVDs, they're the ones that I do revisit the least of the 4 volumes. And I watched them like a ton in my time too, but the old wounds and sins of the father aren't. Oh man, like what all do you want to say? The Almost Got Him, Heart of Ice, Laughing Fish, Christmas with the Joker. Like where like I know
Oh yeah,
I watched them so many times.
Yeah,
but even in this didn't feel like I know all this. it
Oh
still
yeah, yeah.
felt fresh and new and in some angles and stuff like that. So it was really like it
Mhm.
was fun to dive into that, reading this for the first time and not feel like, oh, okay, it's just a condensed version of the episodes that I
Yeah,
know
oh
I've
yeah.
seen
It's
before.
more than just yeah, absolutely.
It's
It's
cool.
the story as a base and made it its own thing for sure.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that I know it is in that smaller version, but so many people have DC Universe Infinite Ultra now that they can do the Nightwing Rising collection
Right.
and read that they have a new way for you to track it down and read it rather than like, hey,
Absolutely.
good luck trying to
Good luck
hit
going
up
on eBay.
eBay and spend $35 on a physical trade, which I'm not saying don't do that. It's just
Yeah.
it's more accessible now, at least, which is the whole point. So glad you chose this one. Glad we picked this,
Yeah.
talked about it. Um, yeah, good stuff. So Brian Haas,
Yes.
thanks for coming back on the Batman Book Club.
Absolutely.
You want I think you're gonna come back on this show.
I probably will. I might have told you dibs on something else if I can.
Yeah, you definitely did.
Okay.
You're like, dibs.
And guess
But
what? You want to guess what? I have it and it's sealed. So I
I
haven't
was gonna
opened
say
it yet.
I was really gonna make I know there's one thing that you and I are in the that we already talked about, like we want to do later this year. And I'm
Oh
like,
my
and now that
gosh.
might be the first time that you ever read it, even though you've had it for
No, no, no,
years.
no, no.
And
I've
then
read it. I've read it.
okay,
I read those as they came out. And
the thing for July.
yes,
Oh, you have read them. Okay, cool,
not like recently, but I read
sure.
it as
But
it
you've read
as
it.
I've read it before. I own it and I've read them.
Haas, you're
Yeah,
evolving.
I know. The and also I might have purchased something, another wild pick for the Batman Book Club.
Ooh, I like wild picks.
It's a wild pick, and I don't know if you're gonna. It might be a little pricey to track down unless you can find a digitized copy somewhere. But
Give me a 2 year heads up. I can start saving money now.
it'll be a very interesting pick. I think
Okay.
it might be worth doing.
All right. Well, you heard it here. He'll be back and breaking the seal on some things.
With no less
So
than three goofy picks. So
it's the Haas guarantee. Why don't you go ahead and
yeah.
plug away?
Plug away. Follow me on Twitter at SMB_Brian and my Super Mario Brothers the movie archive website at SMB movie, and just also follow the the Batman Podcast Network on Twitter at Batpod Network. And if you're following the Batman on Film podcast feed, you're just getting pretty much everything except for this and Straight Outta Gotham. And you'll just get to listen to me on the BOF podcast and Batman animation and whatever I frolic over to
That's right.
as I go.
You frolic too. Pete's
That's
the only
right.
one who doesn't frolic.
He does.
I don't frolic. Nobody frolics.
It sounds so stupid.
Nobody
Google
frolics.
and see what happens to you.
No, nobody frolics. As for the Batman Book Club, follow on Twitter and Instagram at the Batman BC for latest episode drops, upcoming episodes, sometimes some giveaways. Hey, the next bracket challenge is coming up soon. I keep talking about I'm sweating over compiling.
What's have you haven't revealed the
you know, but they don't yet, and it's stressful. I am, but I'm also not excited about it.
Yeah.
Because last year I got comments on
just wait
about it and not positive. And I'm like, well, this one's going to be worse.
People are going to crap all over. It's going
to be going to like this.
How could you forget that one?
Yeah. Can't wait.
You call yourself a book club.
Yeah. You know what? That's okay. It's fun, right? Nerddom's fun. This is all good stuff.
It is.
Follow the Batman Book Club YouTube channel where me and the Frolicker Pete are going through the road to No Man's Land. Check that out as we're ending that and getting ready to start the No Man's Land omnibus. If you want to support the show, there's a variety of ways you can do it. Patreon.com/TheBatmanBC, tpublic.com, type TBBC for the Batman Book Club, where you can see different things you can get with the fancy logo created by Justin Kowalski. Slapped on some things. But if you want to support the show and you don't want to spend any money at all, it's 100% A-okay. The quickest, most impactful, and easiest thing that you can do is rate and review the show. So wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Google Play, wherever. Just go to the rate and review section, rate and review the show, because the more reviews it gets, the more it helps spread the word. And as we all know, the word is panic. So for Ryan Haas, I am Ryan Lauer. And until next time, read my panic.